The August issue of Down East magazine is now out, and it focuses on the great gem of Maine, Acadia National Park, but it focuses on how to enjoy it away from the crowds.
Brian Kevin is the managing editor. He joins us with a look inside the magazine. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with some Maine moments here. We'll start with one that's a really cool shot from Cape Nedick. Mitchell McKee took this one with a GoPro.
Yeah, and he makes the point in his little text that accompanies this that every so often it just pays to take a classic Maine setting and find a completely new vantage point from it. And you can't argue that that's not what this is.
He literally jumped in the water to take this photo.
I suppose he did. The camera is underwater in any case, and it's a really, really cool perspective.
This is the next Maine moment by Jamie Walter, the East Branch of the Penobscot River. Also a really neat shot.
Yeah, Jamie's a regular contributor, and he and some others launched this sort of transect of Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument last year. Came back with a bunch of cool shots and talk about new perspectives. I love that aerial view of the canoe trip, the classic Maine canoe trip.
Up in a tree to get.
He's up in a tree. Got to climb it. Yep.
The cover story is on Acadia National Park.
Yeah.
Everybody reveres Acadia, but you go from July to September, you just might run into 1.75 million people who are there over that time. So this article focuses on how to enjoy the park away from the crowds.
I mean, every year Acadia attracts more and more people, and it's a story you've read in Down East, and you've read it 100 other places too. It was upwards of 3.5 million last year, I think, over the course of the year. But you shouldn't let that spoil it, you know, and you have to be smart about the way that you travel, and you must get out of your car. There's a couple other great tips, a couple dozen other great tips that we've kind of packed in here. We turned to a terrific guidebook writer and a Mainer named James Kaiser, who sat down with the editorial staff and worked with us to look at different ways that you can get out there. Not the least of which, as this cover photo shows, is get yourself on the water. Jordan Pond and the surroundings is a really busy area on the trails, but you find yourself in a boat, in a canoe or in a kayak offshore, and suddenly you're getting this new perspective again on Acadia, and you're not dealing with these foot traffic everywhere.
And still find serenity.
Oh, absolutely. There's plenty of it to be had on the quiet side, and we point out a few different trails over there that are a little bit less visited, different times of day and different sort of alternative viewpoints. Sure, you want to see sunrise from Cadillac Mountain before you die, but you're going to see it with 1,700 other people on there if you go on the wrong day. But there are beaches where you can get a sunrise that is every bit as powerful and sort of memorable as you can get on Cadillac Mountain, or nearby peaks if you're willing to hoof it at 6 a.m. because you can't drive. And if you're willing to go out of your way in some of those ways, there's still really extraordinary stuff in Acadia where you can feel pretty alone.
Another article in the magazine is about Camp Ellis, a community on the shore in York County that, again, every news organization follows, because whenever there's a big storm, the focus is on erosion at Camp Ellis. Now, it's got a really distinctive nature down there. That community has really got its own vibe, but it's threatened, has been for decades, and will be for as far out as the eye can see by the threat of erosion, which is caused by the jetty there.
And it defies easy summary, but like you said, there's been a lot of great reporting on the way that some of the coastal engineering there, combined with climate change, arguably in more intensive storms over the last few years, has threatened the community and watched the beach turn into just like a ribbon in places. We sent Ginny Wright, our senior editor who writes these place pieces really well, down there off and on for a few months to both kind of get that story of how folks there are dealing with this literally disappearing, in some senses, community, but then also get to that vibe that you mentioned, where this is a place that has that classic old school Maine beach vibe. It's historically like a middle class community and not sort of a ritzy community. There's still a working fishing fleet down there, and you've got folks that are just hanging out on the beach at 11 o'clock at night and shooting the breeze, who've lived there for generations upon generations. So.
You got a story in here too about farms and how it's become a big thing to go have dinner at farms in Maine.
This is what my family does on like a Friday night for recreation on the mid-coast. It's easy to fall into the habit of thinking this is what everyone does on a Friday night. But the point of this piece was that you have more and more places for whom occasionally inviting people in the community over to the farm to hang out and eat and recreate is part of the business plan and or the mission statement and just part of what it means to run and farm in Maine. So you have these folks at High Ridge Farm in Montville who are doing these amazing taco nights. You have these folks at Oyster River Wine Growers where we go out many Wednesday nights during the summer to hang out with our kids and listen to music and eat terrific pizza. And it's just part of the fabric of farm communities in a way that I don't know that it necessarily was 20 or 30 years ago.
We want to hang out with your kids and go have great farm dinners.
Thanks for the invite.
Brian Kevin from Down East Magazine. Thanks again, Brian.
Thanks.
Again, all of these stories in the August issue of Down East Magazine. And we'll be back in just a moment.